In the previous video, we have seen how to connect SDRAngel to our SDR receiver and use the ADSB decoder to receive aircraft data. Today, we will dive deeper into the decoder configuration and learn how to improve its performance. We will also see what some of these numbers mean. Let's get started. First of all, the center frequency. 1090 MHz is used worldwide, and that's fine, but I would like to point out for those of you in the United States only that there is also 978 MHz that can be monitored, but it's typically used by smaller aircraft. Here, on the receiver's main tab, you can see these two checkboxes, DC and IQ. As you can see, DC is used to remove any DC offset that may bias the signal. IQ, on the other hand, further helps balancing the input signal for a cleaner result. Let's move on to the sample rate SR. We already talked about it in the first video and stressed that it has to be at least 2.5 million samples per second for the ADSB decoder to work. If your hardware supports high rates, then go for it. The higher the better. You can go watch part 1 anytime in case you missed some of the steps and then come back when you are back on track. For the decimation setting, just leave it to 1. It is basically a divider for the actual bandwidth that can be reduced in order to improve the signal-to-noise ratio. Since we are actually needing all that bandwidth to decode the signal, it makes sense to have it set to 1. I guess that if you have a device capable of 5 million samples per second, for example, then you could set the decimation to 2, but I'm not sure. Let me know in the comments if you managed to do so. Now, on to the gain. There is no universal value. Too low of a setting and you won't hear any signal. Too high and you will end up amplifying noise. A good rule of thumb I found is to set it like so, close to the right side, but please experiment with your hardware. Then, also tick the AGC checkbox so that SDRAngel can try to find the best setting for the gain. Okay, let's now move on to the ADSB specific settings. There are a couple of things to play with as well. First, we have the bandwidth slider to set the bandwidth used by the decoder. Let's make sure it is set at least to 2.5–2.6 MHz. You can also see the current bandwidth with respect to the device settings here. Then we have another sampling rate setting, that is the sampling rate actually used by the decoder. It should be the same as the one we set on the SDR tab. You might have noticed we also have a sort of a squelch dial here, and it's used to set the decoder sensitivity. The default should work fine, but it is possible to experiment, just as we did for the gain, and the same recommendations hold. Therefore, don't go either too high or too low. Now, if all settings are correct and the antenna is able to receive some signal, we should start seeing some data both here on the table and here on the map. Of course, you may be not able to fully decode much data in a single shot, so give it a bit of time in order to hopefully gather more details for an aircraft. Let's examine some packets and then we will go through a few more non-essential settings you could still find useful, so bear with me. Okay, so now I let SDRAngel run for a few minutes waiting for some signals, and here there are some. Looking at the table, you can find all sorts of information about the aircraft. For example, its unique ID that you can look up on the internet to get additional info, the call sign, its altitude, heading, ground speed, airspeed, and so on. Explaining every single bit of information would require a video on its own. If you don't see all the fields populated, that's normal. It depends on the antenna, the aircraft position relative to you, and other factors. As a result, the information refresh rate is not constant, as it relies on proper packet decoding. Here is the decoder settings window. You can also customize the map view from here. As you can see, there's quite a number of settings you can tinker with, but they are quite self-explanatory. And from here, there is also the possibility to forward the decoded data to several external services. I'm not going into the details of this because I haven't tested yet, but just be aware you also have the possibility to expand the global area of coverage of your favorite ADSB network, especially if you can mount an antenna outside on your balcony, or even better, on your rooftop. Okay, so I hope this video helped you better understand some of the parameters that can make your decoding experience with SDRAngel more enjoyable. Now go and try it yourself. This information will help you. If you have any questions or suggestions to share, leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching. 73.